Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Soccer Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Steven Melendez, and I'm going to be bringing you the latest and greatest in soccer news from around the world. Welcome back, everyone, to your favorite soccer podcast. I'm here ready to give you guys the best, as always, and we got a lot of Champions League football to get into today. We had a full week of it. We're getting down to the wire in the group stages, so I want to focus on that primarily in today's show. So let's just get right into what we're going to be talking about, which, of course, the first segment, we're just going to get into those Tuesday Champions League matches, just recap each game, and then, of course, talk about how the groups are all shaping up with just one game left to go. And then we're going to be doing the same thing in the second part of the show, but that with the Wednesday matchups. I felt like it was best just to split them up because it's just a lot of matches, and I want to get into detail and just talk a bit about those games, and of course the groups in the end more. And I feel like I can do that better by splitting it up into two parts. And then last, we're going to be talking, I haven't talked about the domestic leagues for a little while now. We've been wrapped up in international football, of course Champions League. I've talked about MLS for a little bit, but we're going to start doing, I'm going to do a little recap of each of the top 5 domestic leagues and just go over the tables. I'm not going to do it the same way I did before because, again, it's 20, pretty much about 20 teams per league, so that's a lot of time to put into one segment. So I'm going to talk a lot about the Premier League because that's, of course, the league I cover the most. And then we're going to quickly just go over each of the top 5 teams in those leagues, and then I'll talk about a few notable clubs further down the table. And then last in today's show, we're going to be talking about the top 10 current Switzerland players right now, as that is the next country in the FIFA World Rankings as we continue our top 10 around the world. So let's get right into it, starting with the Tuesday Champions League games, starting with Shakhtar Donetsk versus Real Madrid, as we see Shakhtar once again having the best of Real Madrid, which is just, I'll tell you, like, soccer is just ridiculous. It's so, you just can't predict it. You really can't. Because Shakhtar get absolutely throttled by Borussia Mönchengladbach 10-0 between 2 games. And then they come out against Real Madrid, what should be a much better side, and get absolutely dominate this game 2-0. They didn't have much more possession. They had 41% to Real Madrid's 59%. They had 7 shots to Real Madrid's 15. The pass percentage was about even, so both teams were in the game pretty much consistently. But Shakhtar were just able to get those consistent opportunities in the final third and capitalize on them. Even though they had 4 less shots on target, they made more. They made those few shots count, and Real Madrid just now makes this group even that much more exciting to watch. Because if they would have won this game, I kind of feel like they weren't going to let that last game slip. But now, literally anything can happen. It's incredible to think that it's possible that Borussia. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it at the end of this segment. So I don't want to skip ahead. But yes, it's just what a game for Shakhtar. They got a score from Dentinho in the 57th minute. That was the opening score of the game. There was not a single score until the second half and a little bit into it. And that was one of the things that I was always wondering about with Real Madrid heading into this season. You knew that their defense was good, which really in this game it wasn't dominant, but their attack, can they consistently get enough open looks with the players that they have? They rely on a lot of youth and a lot of inexperienced players that, of course Eden Hazard's there, you got Karim Benzema, but Modric can't play every game. Same thing with Kroos. Those guys, they're getting a bit older, so they can't play just every single game 90 minutes. It's just not possible. But realistically, they Real Madrid kind of needs them. They need that playmaking in the midfield. They need that those players that can set the tempo of the game. But they don't have that all the time. They're usually left relying on guys like Rodrigo, Vinicius Jr., who aren't bad players, but they're just not ready for this stage, clearly. So just a tough loss for Real Madrid as they lose 2-0 to Shakhtar Donetsk. Next, we have RB Salzburg versus Lokomotiv Moscow, as Salzburg defeat Moscow 3-1. And this game was pretty much... It had RB Salzburg pretty much all over it. I mean, they were dominating possession for most of the game. Towards the end, Lokomotiv started getting it back, but which kind of made it even, 51% to 49%. Lokomotiv ended up edging it out a bit. But RB Salzburg had many more opportunities in the final third. They had 19 shots to Lokomotiv's 6. And they weren't very efficient with those shots, but they made them count. They got 3. Berisha got a brace. Karim Adeyemi scored in the 81st minute, pretty much to put this game away, as Lokomotiv did inch within 1 in the 79th minute from a Miranchuk penalty, but it was just too little too late, as RB Salzburg literally just 2 minutes later by Adeyemi put this game away, making it 3-1. So RB Salzburg gets these 3 points, and it'll be really interesting to see what because we're not going to go into the groups. I shouldn't go into the groups yet. Should I? Should I not? I mean, well, whatever. I'll just go into it. I'll talk about all of them at the end. But really, with this win, it gets them. It was really a much-needed win because they only had 1 point heading into this game, and now they get these 3 points, and now are just 2 points behind Atletico Madrid. And I believe they take them on next in the last game. And that's going to be extremely exciting. It's pretty much RB Salzburg trying to get the win to get into the knockout rounds. And Atletico, I don't think they can do it against Atletico, with Diego Simeone being able to, put together a really good defensive game. But honestly, from what I've seen in this Champions League group stage already, anything can happen. And talking about anything can happen, Inter Milan take on Borussia Mönchengladbach and defeat them 3-2. And this was a nail-biter because it felt like every time that Inter Milan were trying to pull away, Mönchengladbach would come right back. And it just went that way. And Alisson Plea scored a brace. Same thing with Lukaku. However, Lukaku's brace was able to get Inter Milan those 3 very crucial points to stay alive in the Champions League. Because if they had even drawn this game, it would pretty much be game over for them. They wouldn't have, especially with Shakhtar beating Real Madrid, they would have only had 3 points with everyone else at 8, 7, and 7. It just wouldn't have worked out for them. They needed to get the 3 points, and they did just that. Huge game for Conte and his side. What you saw between Lukaku and Lautaro Martinez was great. Darmian did well. You also got some strong performances from Brozovic with some excellent tackles and defensive plays. But overall, it still wasn't a dominating performance from Inter Milan. But they did just enough to get through and get the 3 points, so they stay alive. Next, we have Atalanta versus Midtjylland, and honestly, I'm just happy for Midtjylland after getting absolutely destroyed the first 4 games of this group stage. They finally put up a really, even though they still got dominated in possession, Atalanta had more shots. The pass percentage was nowhere close. Like Michelin only completed 60% of their passes to 80% for Atalanta. But again, they stick to their game plan. They get an early goal. Of course, they try to play back, and that's why Atalanta were able to get a lot more possession in this game after Michelin scored in the 13th minute. They, of course, were trying to do whatever they can to hold on to that 1-0 lead, but they just couldn't hold on long enough as Christian Romero scored in the 79th minute to give Atalanta that much-needed point to stay ahead of Ajax in the group stage. And it's going to be a nail-biter going down to the end because Atalanta, I believe, take on Ajax in the last game. If I'm not mistaken, yes, they do. And that's going to be a very exciting match to watch as Ajax need to get all 3 points in order to advance. So it'll be interesting to see who gets out on top on that one. Now we got the marquee matchup between Bayern Munich and Atletico Madrid. And this was anything but marquee that first time they met as Bayern just absolutely obliterated Atletico. This time, Atletico were able to hold on to a 1-1 draw. It was more like Bayern were able to just scratch those 1 point as they were down going into the 85th minute. But then a penalty given to Bayern allowed Thomas Müller to score and tie it up after João Felix had taken the lead for Atletico in the 26th minute. Atletico had the lead for over an hour of game time, and they just couldn't hold it on that any longer. And Bayern Munich do what they always do. However, it should be noted that with this draw, their record of, I think it was at that point, 15 straight wins in the Champions League is officially over. I mean, finally, because it was getting ridiculous at this point what they were doing. So Atletico were able to hold on against this extremely tough opponent, get a point to stay ahead of RB Salzburg by 2 points. However, it's not enough to secure a knockout round spot. So that last game is going to be extremely important for them. Next, we have Manchester City versus Porto, the 2 top teams in this group. Of course, Manchester City were, the top team. They have been dominating throughout. But Porto were able to hold on and get a very crucial point. Not really crucial because both teams are pretty much heading into, they have officially, they've been heading into the next round. But yeah, so Porto are able to hold on, even though they technically got dominated by Manchester City throughout this entire game. Manchester City had nearly 70% possession. They had 18 shots to Porto's 2, but Manchester City just couldn't get that goal to get 3 points. Not that they really needed it, but when you look at the game that they had before, let me check that out real quick. They dominated Porto, right? Yeah, they won 3-1. So even if they were tied in points, Manchester City would still, if Manchester City somehow lost the last game and Porto won and they were tied at 13 points, Man City still goes ahead of them in the group due to away goals. So Man City got a lock of the top of this group. So really, there was really no point in trying too hard in this game, but still, they took a lot of possession. They got a lot of shots. They got 6 shots on target. They just couldn't get past Porto. Next, we have Liverpool versus Ajax, and honestly, this is a bit of an underwhelming game, even though it was certainly back and forth. But Liverpool, there was only 1 goal scored in this game, and Liverpool was the one that scored it. They came out on top, got the 3 points to secure a knockout round spot for them. And I was kind of disappointed in Ajax. I mean, they had more possession, but they had 11 shots, 4 on target. I mean, that's not terrible. They had better passing overall throughout. So they were certainly more organized, but they just couldn't take advantage of Liverpool's, how should I say it, like not being informed like Atalanta did in the last Champions League game. So certainly very, very bad loss for Ajax here. and it puts them in a tough spot heading into the last game. And last, we have Marseille versus Olympiacos. And my goodness, finally, Marseille score in the Champions League. They get their first 2 goals in the group stage, and it was very important for them to get this win because it keeps them in contention for that final Europa League spot. Of course, it's still kind of a long shot because overall, they did lose to Olympiacos in away goals, and it just doesn't feel like, I just don't think they can win against either Porto or Man City. And I think they actually take on Man City in that last game, which they do. So the odds of them actually heading into the Europa League, is slim to none, but at least they put up a fight. Of course, those 2 goals just so happen to be penalties. And also, of course, they're scored by Dimitri Payet. Who else? But aside from the penalties, Marseille did play a dominant game in this one. They had more possession. They had more shots on target. Their passing was better. And it was a good sign for them to at least go, have a little bit of pride there and play a good game in the Champions League. Because up until this point, it has been absolutely atrocious from them. I mean, like I said, they hadn't scored a single goal up until this point. They get the 2 goals. Of course, still don't have technically an open play goal, but still, they'll take them where they can get them, and they got the 3 points, and they are still in contention for that Europa League spot. Now, let's quickly go over the each group and then talk about that final game coming up, match day 6, and which ones are going to be the decisive ones. So, starting with Group A, we got Bayern that are clearly through onto the next round with 13 points, absolutely dominating their group with 4 wins, 1 draw. They got that last game against Lokomotiv, which I'm sure they'll take care of business there. They won't be looking to take. I mean, I'm sure they'll put in a lot of their second teamers, but I think that'll still be enough to get by Lokomotiv Moscow. They have the best defense in this group, best offense, and just overall are the better team. But now you look at that 2-3 battle there. I mean, RB Salzburg getting that win over Lokomotiv puts them into that conversation. I mean, technically even Lokomotiv are there. I mean, they're only 3 points down. But let me look at those games between Atletico and Lokomotiv real quick. So it was a 0-0 draw and then 1-1. So, and that 1-1 was where? Was that one on the road? That was at Lokomotiv. So technically Atletico actually go through on away goals. So there is no chance for Lokomotiv to get into the knockout rounds. It is solely RB Salzburg, and they have a prime chance as they take on Atletico in the last game of the group stage. Anything can happen, man. I mean, RB Salzburg have a solid attack. Of course, it's going to be going up against one of the better defenses in this entire competition in Atletico Madrid, even though they haven't really shown it in the group stage. I mean, yes, they've allowed 8 goals, but when you look at that attack, I'm extremely surprised that they've only scored 5 goals in their 5 matches. It's just, I expected much more from João Felix, Luis Suarez. Of course, it takes a little while for someone like Luis Suarez, to get acclimated with the team, but at this point, they should be much better offensively, especially against a team like RB Salzburg that has allowed 15 goals in this group stage, and Lokomotiv that aren't. I mean, yes, they're a sound team. They put a lot of effort in, but it's just they need to do better than what they have. And of course, in order to really, I mean, of course they can win zeros. They can get a draw 0-0 and still make it through. But you want to, going into the knockout rounds, you want to be more positive than let's just try to get a 0-0 draw. So that last game is going to have a lot to it, and I can't wait for that to happen. Next, we got the Group B, which is probably the most exciting group at this time, at least for these Tuesday matchups. We'll get into the Wednesday ones pretty soon. But you look at this, and you got Mönchengladbach at the top with 8 points. They got a +9 goal differential after their demolition of Shakhtar Donetsk. But then you got Donetsk and Real Madrid tied at 7 points. Of course, Real Madrid lost both games to Shakhtar, so they obviously lose that tiebreaker. But then Inter Milan is there a little wild card with 5 points. If they can get that win against Shakhtar in the last game, and Real Madrid somehow, not somehow, because they haven't been dominant at all. But if they lose to Mönchengladbach, who have clearly been the better team in this group, Inter Milan can get through by the skin of their teeth. So I don't know. I just honestly, I can't wait for either one of these games. There's going to be so much going into them, and a lot's riding on the line for all 4 teams, because even Mönchengladbach can go down, because they, if I'm not mistaken, they just lost to Inter Milan, and in the game before that, what was it? It was a draw to Inter Milan, so they lose to Inter Milan on away goals. And if Inter Milan are able to make it through and Real Madrid beat them, they could also be out of. So no team is safe here, and that just makes that final game so much better to watch. So that is going to be exciting to keep an eye on. And then next we have Group C with Man City and Porto clearly going through, and this is all already locked up. The only thing that really can be looked at is Olympiacos and Marseille battling for that Europa League spot. And Marseille have a chance. They have to put up an incredible performance against Man City. Of course, even a draw can technically get them through if Olympiacos lose to Porto, but it's just the odds are clearly against them. And for Porto and Man City, they are off to the knockout rounds. Man City is the lead in the group, and Porto have second place. So, we'll see how they do in the knockout rounds. Of course, Man City have been struggling in the knockout rounds of the Champions League pretty much their entire history. And it'll be interesting to see if Pep Guardiola can finally get them over that hump. Next, we got Group D. This is the final group. Is this the final group? Yes, this is the final group that we're going to be talking about in this segment. And you got Liverpool, who have officially, punched their ticket into the knockout rounds with the lead in this group. 4 wins and a loss. Of course, that one loss being to Atalanta in their last game. Or I guess second to last game, because they, of course, they just beat Ajax 1-0. But with that loss, Ajax are now behind Atalanta with 7 points, while Atalanta have 8. Midtjylland, of course, they've been out of the knockout rounds of course, they needed to get a win here in order to be even in the discussion, I believe. Yeah, they needed to get a win to even be in the discussion, but they don't do it. They clearly weren't the lead. They were the least. What am I saying? They had the least quality of all these other teams. It just wasn't fair to them. They got put in a very, very tough group. But that last game between Atalanta and Ajax is going to be prime time television. I cannot wait to see it and see who makes it into the knockout rounds. Either team will be worthy. Ajax are always one of the top teams, in the Champions League, and Atalanta have been, on the rise over the past few seasons. So either one would be really exciting to watch in the knockout rounds. So that's going to wrap it up for this segment. Make sure you guys stick around, because when I come back, we're going to be talking about the Wednesday games and doing the same thing, going over those groups as well. So stick around.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football, from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
welcome back, everyone. If you missed the last segment, we went over the Tuesday Champions League games and then, of course, went over the groups as we are just one game away from ending this group stage. So let's just get right into the Wednesday matchups that had a lot of exciting games. And we're going to be starting with one of the best ones of the day with RB Leipzig defeating Istanbul Basaksehir 4-3. This game had everything. I mean, Poulsen going ahead in the 26th minute, and RB Leipzig got a second goal before halftime, and it really looked like RB Leipzig were just going to pull away in this game, as Istanbul have been, considerably the worst team in this group. Even though they did win a game against Manchester United, they were obviously the odd man out in this group. But little did you know, Basaksehir had life, as Irfan Kahveci scored just before halftime in extra time of the first half with a really nice left-footed bending shot. And you're going to have to get used to that because that pretty much happened every single time for Basaksehir. Kahveci coming through with his left foot time and time again to come away with a hat trick in this game, and literally every single time it felt like RB Leipzig were going to be pulling away in this game because Dani Olmo scored in the 66th minute to make it 3-1 for RB Leipzig. You had back-to-back goals from Kahveci to make it 3-3, with that third one being a free kick that hit the top just underneath the crossbar. Beautiful goal, and it looked like he was going to be the hero for Istanbul. However, Alexander Sorloth took that title for RB Leipzig, that is, as they got that final goal in extra time to make it 4-3 and get those extremely crucial 3 points, as they are now tied with PSG and Manchester United at the top of Group H with 9 points each. That is incredible. That's easily the best group at the moment, because you got 3 top clubs going at it, trying to make it through to the knockout rounds, and each have a clear chance. But in this game, I mean, RB Leipzig, they were the better team, but Istanbul certainly deserved to get a result here. I mean, they fought back and they played extremely well, but RB Leipzig just had an answer every single time, and ultimately got the final say in this game. But you got to tip your hat to Istanbul to put in a very strong performance to try to stay at least within a Europa League spot. But now with this loss, they are officially out of the competition and will not have a chance to get to the Europa League. I do, however, expect them to continue to play the way they have all group stage long, and putting up a very big time performance against PSG. So I am not expecting anything from that game. I'm just gonna watch. You guys know me, I'm a PSG fan, and I mean, we'll get into it more later as once we do the full group review. But still, this game, RB Leipzig, Istanbul Basaksehir, is one of those football games that you wish and you dream you could go watch live, because it had all the emotions. It was incredible. Next, we had FC Krasnodar versus Staderens, and Krasnodar were able to edge out a 1-0 victory with of course, a goal from Marcus Berge. It just makes sense, right? We talked about him in, I believe it wasn't the last game, it wasn't the last episode, because we talked about the top 10 Chile players, but it was the one before that. We talked about Sweden players. We talked about Marcus Berge being one of the more consistent strikers out there, and he does it again for Krasnodar, and it's a big time goal for them, big time goal, and it gets them pretty much I wouldn't say guaranteed, but pretty much a guaranteed spot into the Europa League. Yeah, pretty much. But because let's go check it out real quick to see what happened between the other game between Rennes and Krasnodar. It was a 1-1 draw at Rennes. So so they go through on away goals. I don't actually feel like there's a chance for Rennes here, because they're now down 3 points, and I don't think Krasnodar now officially gets into the Europa League, so it was a huge win for them. And they weren't dominant. I mean, Staderens had more possession. The shots were pretty much even. Rennes were better in possession, just passing the ball. I mean, but they were able to get that goal. They had that striker, and that's something that Staderens were missing here. I mean, they obviously have Camavinga, one of the better young defensive midfielders in the world, and they have a solid midfield overall. Of course, losing Edouard Mendy hurt big time, but they were clearly at a loss here in terms of quality, and even against Krasnodar they couldn't keep up. Marcus Berge it's probably the best attacking player in this game, and that ultimately won out here. So they get the 3 points and get that ticket punched into the Europa League. Next, we had Barcelona versus Ferencváros, and as expected, Barcelona took care of business and defeated them 3-0. And they came out firing on all cylinders early on in this game, as they got all 3 goals within the first 30 minutes. First from Antoine Griezmann in the 14th minute, then Martin Braithwaite, who has been scoring pretty often for Barcelona as of late. I mean, he was a very, very solid pickup for them. A lot of people, not really knowing, and I'm going to say me included, didn't really know who he was when he was picked up by Barcelona. And he's certainly proven his worth for them, scoring on a consistent basis. And then, of course, Ousmane Dembele gets his penalty goal in the 28th minute. Now, throughout this game, Barcelona dominated possession. Even though Ferencváros did get 10 shots, only 2 of those were on target, so they weren't really, getting a lot of efficient looks at goal. But and really neither were Barcelona, because even though they had 19 shots, only 5 of those were on target. So it wasn't really that crazy of a game either. It was more the first half, and then they let their foot off the gas pedal a bit. But yeah, they take care of business, get all 3 points, and are heading into the knockout rounds. Obviously, I mean, they've been there already, but they're just fooling around now. A plus 14 goal differential in 5 games. I mean, come on. Next, we have my favorite game of the day, with PSG defeating Manchester United 3-1, and this game couldn't have gone any better for PSG early on, as Neymar scored in the 6th minute off a deflection, off Lindelof, I believe it was, and that angle was not easy. I mean, people say that goal was put on a silver platter for Neymar, but that angle is not easy. I guarantee you most people don't hit that angle. And Neymar did it because, of course, he's got the skill. And then the only reason Manchester United got that goal is because it took a terrible, and I mean terrible, deflection off, I believe it was Marquinhos or Kimpembe. No, I think it was Diallo, who it took a really bad deflection off of. And no, it was Danilo Pereira. I remembered it now. Yeah, it took a nasty deflection. Navas was going to save it, but then it went right into goal. That's the only reason Marcus Rashford scored this goal. I mean, honestly, Manchester United should have probably had another goal in there, as they were really putting a lot of pressure on PSG, and I was getting nervous. I'm not lying. But then things pretty much ended at that, because they were getting a lot, towards the end of that first half, they were getting a lot of possession, even the beginning of the second half. But then Marquinhos scored in the 69th minute, a scrappy goal from our skipper, just gets us that much-needed goal to make it 2-1. And then Fred, what you doing, man? What are you doing? I mean, your team's down 2-1. You make a really dumb challenge and get yourself a red card. It doesn't look good for him, and it was downhill from there. I mean, because then PSG, obviously with the man advantage, took advantage of it. And, I mean, just the skill and just overall, abilities of Neymar, Mbappe, just a lot of the guys that are there. I mean, Rafinha played great. Verratti as well. I was about to go también. I'm at Verratti. I'm just in that Latino, phase right there. I just went Latino mode almost for a second. But It's just overall this was a great performance from Manchester United, from PSG. I was so happy to see because honestly, going into this game, I was nervous. I mean, Manchester United, not that they've been playing great in the Premier League, because they have not, but that has clearly not mattered up until this point, because even going into that game where we lost 2-1 to them, they were playing terrible in the Premier League. And I was feeling confident then. I was like, there's no way we lose to Manchester United. And we lost. So I was really nervous heading into this game, and PSG took care of business. I love what Neymar does. I mean, he's such a crafty player. He's easily the most technically skilled player in the world. I do not care what anybody says. Messi is not there anymore. Not what Neymar does with the ball. Of course, Neymar isn't as efficient and productive with those technical skills. I'll give you that. But in terms of flashiness and just, with the ball at his feet, there's no one better than Neymar. And it's just so fun to watch. But I'll tell you what, the play of the game, in my opinion, it was something so simple. Something so simple, but it just makes me feel like he should be playing on this. He should be in that starting 11 every single game. Rafinha. He had a clear shot at goal. I mean, obviously the angle was tough, and it was he probably would have gotten blocked there. But any other player, not any other player. Some people will make the right pass, but most players would just try to go for a shot, and then you see Neymar just hey man, I was wide open. But Rafinha, he fakes going for the pass. He draws in the goalkeeper and the defender, and then just gives a little pass back to Neymar for the wide open goal in extra time, just to seal things for PSG to make it 3-1. I thought that was an incredible play. It was simple. It was nothing crazy, but it was just the thought of it, and just the IQ to know that Neymar was there and that he would draw players and that he would give him a wide open shot. That's why you bring in a guy like Rafinha, because he does those type of plays. He's very smart, and I just loved it. So PSG get a very, very crucial 3 points, and very crucial, because Manchester United were dominating this group, and now PSG with 2 wins in a row against RB Leipzig and Manchester United put them back on top of the group, and I am feeling so good about it. It's the kind of test they needed early on after looking great last season, and I'm just excited to see what they do in the last game to put them into the knockout rounds. Next, we have Borussia Dortmund versus Lazio, and this game ended in a 1-1 draw. Dortmund got off, it wasn't really a dominating performance from either team. The shots were pretty even. Dortmund had a slight edge in possession. Passing was pretty much even. Dortmund did have more passes overall, about 200 more passes at that, but they didn't really do much in terms of getting more attacking, having more of an attacking presence than Lazio. And these are two extremely high octane attacks. You got Ciro Immobile, you have Luis Alberto for Lazio, and then of course, you got Haaland, Jadon Sancho, Giovanni Reina. The list goes on and on for Borussia Dortmund. But it was Rafael Guerreiro, one of the more underrated players on this Dortmund side, that scored and opened up the scoring in this game just before halftime. And honestly, if you were watching this game, you kind of felt like, all right, the floodgates are gonna open up. You're gonna see, Dortmund start, getting more options and attack, and that just wasn't the case in the second half, as Lazio kind of took on a more dominant role in that second half, and it eventually got them a penalty, which Immobile put in comfortably and made it 1-1, and that's pretty much where this game ended. Lazio and Borussia Dortmund getting the draw, and they're both still extremely close. Club Brugge just behind them as well with 7 points, and pretty much it's anybody's group, I should say. So next we have Club Brugge, which we just talked about, versus Zenit St. Petersburg, and Club Brugge really just dominated them here. Up until this point, you were probably thinking these two clubs are pretty even. I even thought Zenit, I'm pretty sure when I did the preview on this in the Champions League, I was thinking that Zenit was going to be on top and Club Brugge were not going to have, were going to be fourth. They weren't going to make it into the Europa League. However, I have been proven wrong, and Club Brugge have taken care of business. They get this 3-0 win. It's a dominating win over Zenit. I mean, of course, they score in the 33rd minute from Charles de Ketelaere, and then a penalty for Hans Van Aken in the 58th minute pretty much puts his game to bed. But then Noah Lang in the 73rd minute pretty much just 3-0. And that's just how it goes. I mean, and really Club Brugge didn't dominate possession. However, they didn't let Zenit do whatever they wanted. Zenit only had 4 shots, not a single one on target. So the pressure was certainly making things difficult for them. And really Club Brugge had taken care of business against the team that they needed to do that against. Because they defeated Zenit in the first game that they played up against them. And now they beat them in the second game. So honestly, just a huge time performance from them, and it keeps them in the hunt for one of those knockout round spots, which I'm extremely impressed with. Next, you got Juventus versus Dynamo Kiev, and just like Barcelona, Juventus take care of business here, get a 3-0 victory. Federico Chiesa opens up the scoring in the 21st minute. Ronaldo, who has rejuvenated this Juventus team, which just goes to show, he's just a GOAT, man. One of the greatest of all time. At his age, the difference he makes on this team is just so clear. But he gets a score. Alvaro Morata scores, and they didn't dominate Dynamo Kiev and just throughout all possessions. I mean, they did have a lot more shots. The possession was slightly in Juventus's favor, but Dynamo still had better pass. Had solid pass percentage, 87% pass completion, which just goes to show they weren't really being pressured or weren't losing the ball that much. They were able to hold on to it, and in this game, Juventus just took care of business, got the 3 points, and even that loss to Barcelona is the difference maker here. It's the reason they're not really going to have a chance to go on to win this group unless this last game is between. I believe this last game is between. It is not. No, is it? Yeah, it is. I'm like, yes, no, yes. The last game is between Barcelona and Juventus, so that's going to be very, very exciting to see how that one turns out because it is in the Camp Nou. So Juventus have a chance to win on away goals after Barcelona defeated them 2-0. So it'll be interesting. 2 teams trying to go for that lead in the group, even though Barcelona obviously have a bigger advantage there. And then lastly, we have Chelsea versus Sevilla, where Chelsea absolutely just made that distance at the top of the table, or at the top of the group, I should say, with a 4-0 victory over Sevilla. And all 4 goals go to that French beast, Olivier Giroud. I mean, what a game from him. He got the party started early with an 8th minute goal. Then he scored 3 goals. He had a second half hat trick with a goal in the 54th minute, 74th minute, and 83rd minute. Well, that 83rd was a penalty to get the 4th goal of the game. And what a sending off for Giroud. Because it looks like this is going to be his last season at Chelsea. A lot of teams trying to get him, and I actually saw recently a report that said PSG was looking into him, which I would love, and I'm just really impressed what he's been able to do. I mean, they just absolutely dominate Sevilla, in terms of just getting more efficient shots, and Olivier Giroud just sends Chelsea into that lead in the group. So now, just quickly, let's go over each group. And recently talking about Group E with Chelsea and Sevilla, this game pretty much officially puts Chelsea into the lead of the group, and they're going to be going into the knockout rounds as first place in the group, and Sevilla will have second place. And pretty much every single place is set in stone as Krasnodar gets that third place and are into the Europa League. Group F, we have Dortmund, Lazio, and Club Brugge at the top with 10, 9, and 7 points respectively. Dortmund, I feel like they pretty much have this group on lock because their last game is against Zenit, who have clearly been the worst team in this group. I mean, they've allowed the most goals, scored the least, and just haven't been, at all competitive in any of these games. So I'd be surprised if Dortmund do not take care of business there and get the lead in this group. But then that last game between Lazio and Club Brugge, that'll be extremely interesting because last year Lazio absolutely fell apart in the Europa League, and they have a chance here to make it to the knockout rounds. Can they take that chance and run with it? We'll just have to wait and see on that one. Of course, Group G, very easy. Got Barcelona, Juventus heading on to the next round comfortably. I mean, just 15 and 12 points each, while Dynamo Kiev and Ferencváros have 1 point apiece. And that last game between Dynamo and Ferencváros, I guess of course you got Juventus and Barcelona fighting for that top spot. Juventus have a chance, if they can somehow defeat Barcelona 3-0. But so obviously odds are in Barcelona's favor. But then Dynamo Kiev and Ferencváros tied at 1. Anybody can make it into that Europa League spot. So there's obviously a lot riding on that one. And then, of course, Group H, I've already talked about it. PSG, Man United, and RB Leipzig all tied with 9 points each. Which teams are going on to the knockout rounds and which are getting relegated to the Europa League? Please don't be PSG, because after making it to the final, if they lose, I mean, my God, if they somehow lose to Istanbul and Man United and RB Leipzig, I honestly, I wouldn't even know what to say. I'd be like, this somehow would feel even worse than all those terrible aggregate, just bottle jobs that they did in the knockout round. It would somehow feel worse because they're taking on easily the worst team in this group and have a chance to make it into the knockout rounds with at least a draw. All they need is a draw. I mean, of course, a draw doesn't guarantee them the lead in the group, but it guarantees them the knockout rounds. But if they somehow find a way to drop the ball here and lose to Istanbul, I would lose my mind. So that's going to wrap it up for this segment. Make sure you guys stick around because when I come back, we're going to be talking about the top 5 domestic leagues and just going over the tables.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back, everyone. If you missed the last segment, we went over the Wednesday matches in the Champions League and, of course, went over the groups as we head into that last game of the group stage. And now we're going to be talking about the top 5 domestic leagues, just going over just a bit of a season recap for each league. I mean, I'm not going to go into every single team. I'm going to go over the top 5 teams in each league, and then go quickly over any other teams that are kind of like in the bottom, like any notables lower down in the standings. So first, we're going to be talking about the Premier League. And at the top of the table, we have Tottenham, who, I mean, honestly, I have to apologize to any Tottenham fans that have listened to me, because I was giving them heat early on in the season after they looked kind of like a mess. And I said it. I said that this team's a mess. They need something to happen. Although they did technically, after I said that, they did technically bring in Sergio Reguilon and Gareth Bale, though Gareth Bale hasn't really been a crazy difference maker for them. He hasn't been the reason that they're at the top of this group. That all boils down to Harry Kane. Of course, I mean, 7 goals, 9 assists. He leads the league in assists by a wide margin. I mean, De Bruyne and Grealish are tied for second with 5. So just think about that. But then he also has 7 goals. I mean, it's just an absolutely ridiculous start to this season for Harry Kane. And certainly at the moment deserves, you know, whatever the top play. I mean, this is way early. We're about, because if you look, we're a little less than a third of the way through the season. But it's just unbelievable what he's been able to do. I didn't think he had this kind of assist playmaking in his bag. I thought he was a pure goal scorer that can obviously link up, but 9 assists in 10 games, that's just incredible. And then, of course, Song, who's been an excellent partner in crime for him in that attack. 9 goals, good for second in the league behind just Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who has 10 goals. He's also got 2 assists, so those 2 guys have just been absolutely incredible. Easily the best 1-2 punch in all of football this season. And I'm talking about not just Premier League. I'm talking about in the world right now. That is the best 1-2 punch. And that is the reason Tottenham are first. But also, got to give my props to Hugo Lloris. 800 or 0.800 save percentage. I don't know why it took me so long to say that stat. But to go along with 4 clean sheets. He's tied for second in clean sheets and second in save percentage in the Premier League. So he's been one of the best goalkeepers early on in this season. And really, he's one of the best goalkeepers in the world. So it goes hand in hand. Some of their best performances, you look at that 2-0 win against Man City. Of course, you got to talk about that 6-1 massacre of Man United. And then also getting that 5-2 win over Southampton, who have been one of the surprise teams this year. Are all very solid performances from them, and it's a big reason why they're number 1 in the standings. Next, you got to look at Liverpool. Of course, they were always going to be up here, but it's just incredible to see that they're literally tied with Tottenham with 21 points, but then they have so many injuries. Virgil van Dijk, Joe Gomez, Alisson, James Milner, Trent Alexander-Arnold. I mean, it's just an incredible list of players that have been out with an injury or injuries so far this season, and they're still one of the best in the entire league. So it's kind of scary to think about. But you look at the key players, so to their season so far, and you got to start with Mohamed Salah. I mean, 8 goals, that's good for third in the league, and he's first on the team in key passes. So he's obviously that engine for the attack, and then of course Sadio Mane as well. I mean, second on the team in key passes, second on the team in tackles won, which that was incredibly surprising because, I mean, he's a forward. That just goes to show the motor that he has to get back on defense and then, of course, be, huge in the attack as well, because he's also first on the team in successful dribbles. He pretty much does it all, and really it doesn't surprise me why he's, considered so high, among pretty much anybody. That I would, when I was doing research on who were the top Premier League players, a lot of people were saying Sadio Mane was better than Mohamed Salah, and I didn't know why. But so far this season, I gotta give the edge to Mohamed Salah. He's just been literally their engine in attack. And then also, I gotta give shout out to Andrew Robertson, one of the best fullbacks in the world, and with Trent Alexander-Arnold out with an injury, he's had to take on more responsibility, and he has done that in stride. 5th in the league in passes completed, 1st in the league in touches and crosses. So he's just obviously bringing it this season, and he's got a goal, 3 assists to contribute to the team. Obviously does a lot on defense as well, and has just been a dynamite player for them. You look at some of their top performances. You got that 3-0 win over Leicester City. That 1-1 draw against Man City. That was very exciting to watch. That game was just had it all there. And then, of course, the 2-0 win over Chelsea. Next, we have Chelsea at number 3. They have the best. They're tied for the best attack with 22 goals. And a lot of that has to be because of Timo Werner. I mean, he has seemingly come into this team and just instantly become their best offensive player. It kind of sucks that Christian Pulisic has been injured so much this season, hasn't been able to really get into a rhythm. But then you also got to talk about probably the best signing of any team in the world in Eduard Mendy. 6 matches played. He's got an 889 save percentage and 5 clean sheets in 6 matches. That's incredible. Already leads the lead in both stats, and certainly is an early signing of the season. And then, of course, N'Golo Kante, finally healthy, and is again one of the best defensive midfielders in the world. For their top performances, you got to look at that 0-0 draw to Tottenham. I mean, of course, it's a goalless draw. That's never fun to watch, but still to do that against Tottenham, one of the best offensive teams in the league, that's very impressive. Of course, that 4-0 win against Crystal Palace was also very impressive. Next, we have Leicester City at number 4. Their top players, you got to be looking at Jamie Vardy with his 8 goals, 2 assists. Harvey Barnes has been extremely important for them, especially with James Maddison not being able to be as consistent as people would hope. And then, of course, goalkeeper Kasper Schmeichel, 729 save percentage with 3 clean sheets. Of course, you got to look at their top performances. 5-2 win over Man City, that 4-1 win over Leeds United, and have overall I've just been super impressed with what Leicester City have been able to do with the amount of injuries that they also have had. But I mean, of course, Liverpool dealing with the same thing, but nobody expected Leicester to really be this high with guys like Pereira and Ndidi out for pretty much months. So I'm very impressed with what Leicester have been able to do and are 4th in the Premier League. And then, of course, the biggest surprise, we got West Ham United at number 5. For me, it all starts with Aaron Cresswell. 3 assists, leads the team in that category, and as well as key passes, has been one of their best playmakers this season. Of course, you got to look at defensive midfielder Declan Rice, one of the better holding midfielders in the world, in my opinion. It leads this team in multiple defensive stats and is an excellent passer in the back, plays that deep line playmaker position. And then Lucas Fabianski. I mean, I talked about him recently in top 10 in one of my top 10 series, and he's got a 722 save percentage with 4 clean sheets, and has been an absolute rock between the sticks for West Ham United, and are after 3 straight wins, I mean, are an early surprise in this Premier League season. Now, going through the table, a couple other surprises on this. I mean, you still got Man City and United in the mid-table. I mean, Man United have put together 3 straight victories, so obviously are creeping back up there. But Man City have not been able to find any sort of consistency. They've got a loss and 2 draws in their last 5 games, and it's just weird seeing these 2 teams down there. And then, of course, I mean, I don't know how much of a surprise it is, but it's just like how quickly it happened. Arsenal, after starting the season so well, are now 14th in the table with 3 losses and a draw in their last 5 games. It's tough to watch. I mean, because that early season start where they beat Fulham. I mean, of course, I was saying it's Fulham, so we gotta hold our horses here a little bit. And then West Ham still, I mean, even though West Ham are playing really great now, at the time it was like, all right, it's only West Ham. We got to keep our, don't get too excited. But, really when you look at those early wins, they even beat Sheffield United. That was also a very easy win for them. But since then, they lost to Liverpool, lost to Man City, lost to Leicester City. They did beat Man United 1-0. That was a big-time win for them. But, losing 3-0 to Aston Villa, losing 2-1 to Wolves, they just have not been able to step up in any sort of way against the big-time clubs. And that has always been an issue for Arsenal. So that's going to wrap it up for the Premier League. Now let's move on to the Bundesliga. We're going to talk about them pretty quickly. Well, we're going to go over these next 4 leagues because I always talk about Premier League a lot more because I cover them a lot more. But let's just go over the Premier League. So Bayern Munich, of course, number 1 in the league. They have the best attack by a lot. Their defense has not been as consistent as what you would expect. They've allowed 13 goals, which is the worst in the top 5, or technically worse in the top 6 in the Bundesliga. But it really doesn't matter when you consider how good an attack they are. I mean, Robert Lewandowski leads the league with 12 goals. He's at it again. Same thing with Thomas Müller. He leads the league with 6 assists, and it's really not surprising. But then when Lewandowski also has 4 assists, and same thing with Kimmich. So it's just a machine, really. I have to say it. Bayern Munich are a machine, even though they're only ahead of RB Leipzig by 2 points, who are have been performing extremely well with 6 wins and 2 draws in their first 9 games. Their defense has been that's been their calling card. They have the best defense in this entire league. 6 goals allowed in 9 games. And that's been very, very impressive. They have gotten wins against some of the easier competition. I mean, 3-0 win over Freiburg, 2-1 win over Arminia, 2-1 win over Hertha, Augsburg, Schalke, Mainz. I mean, so they haven't really taken on the tough teams. Those games will be coming up. I mean, they take on Bayern extremely soon, pretty much this weekend, actually. So that's going to be a big time test for them, and you also got to look at the Champions League. I mean, they're in the thick of it there, but being second up until this point, that's very impressive. Bayer Leverkusen being third is also impressive. I have 19 points, only 1 behind, so they're in that thick. I mean, the top of the league group is extremely close. I mean, with Bayern at 22, Leipzig at 20, Leverkusen at 19, Dortmund at 18, and you got Wolfsburg at 17. It's a 5-point difference between number 1 and number 5. So there really isn't a big difference. And Leverkusen and Wolfsburg are the only teams to lose a game in this entire season, as Leverkusen have 5 wins and 4 draws in their 9 games. And I've just been impressed with what they've been able to do. I mean, you look at their games. It's also nothing crazy. They beat Mönchengladbach 4-3. That was a good performance. They had a 1-1 draw against RB Leipzig. They beat Mainz. They beat Augsburg. They beat who else did they beat? A draw against Hertha Berlin. That's not a really good performance. But still, they've done what they needed to do. They haven't dropped, more. They've at least gotten a point in every single game, and that has them third. Next, you have Dortmund, who have been kind of disappointing, but it's with 3 losses in 9 games. Every other one was a win, and those losses, you got to look. A loss to FC Köln, that cannot happen. Obviously, lose to Bayern, you can't really say anything if anybody loses to Bayern. But then the other loss was to Augsburg. So, I mean, they've got 2 terrible losses so far this season, and that has them 4th. I mean, if they would have won those 2 games, which are very winnable games, they'd be in the lead in this league, and that just can't happen in a race against Bayern Munich. You can't drop points, because Bayern Munich had a crazy loss to Hoffenheim, and they have not dropped points since. Well, they got a draw against, who was it? They got a draw against Werder Bremen. So that's obviously a huge performance for Werder Bremen, but that's as close as they've gotten. And then Wolfsburg have been very, very solid all season. They had a big-time win against Werder Bremen, 5-3. They got a tie to Hanover, a tie to Hertha. That's been the main thing, is that their defense has been solid and been able to keep them in games, but they just don't score enough. They only have 14 goals in 9 games. They need to do better than that. And then after that, I mean, Werder Bremen, I expected more from them, but they're 11th. They got 5 draws, 2 wins in their 9 games. Mönchengladbach are down to 7th. They've got 3 wins in their last 5 games, but they just need to do better than that. So that's going to wrap it up for Bundesliga. Now let's move on to Serie A. where we still have AC Milan on top, and they're starting to put a little bit of distance between the rest of the field. They have a 5-point lead over number 2 Inter Milan, who have been able to creep back into this on the top of this table with 3 wins and 2 draws in their last 5 games. Sassuolo have dropped a few points. They did lose their last game to Inter Milan, no less. So I remember talking about that game, and that was going to be a huge test for both those teams. And there's a reason that now Inter Milan are ahead of them in the table. Of course, you got Juventus behind them. They have not dropped a game. The only other team is AC Milan, who have 7 wins, 2 draws. However, Juventus have been just getting a lot of draws. And in their last 5 games, they have 3 of those. That just can't be the case. They have done a lot better since Cristiano's been there, which is, expected. You bring in one of the GOATs onto your team, you're going to do better. And their defense is tied for the best in the league. I mean, with Verona, no less. So Juventus certainly are doing what they can. I mean, they haven't had Ronaldo. They didn't have Ronaldo for a few games. Obviously, they're going to be creeping back up the table. But so far, an early disappointing start for them. Napoli at 5th. They've dropped a few points over the last couple games. They got 2 losses in their last 4 games. And those losses, let's see who they were to. They got a loss to AC Milan, so you can't really fault them for that. And also they got a loss to Sassuolo. So, when they go up against those top teams, they haven't been able to take care of business, and they need to. That's an area where they need to correct, and if they want to be considered one of the top teams in Serie A, they need to win those games. And then the other teams I want to look at, Atalanta, have not, after starting off the season so well, they have dropped points. They got 2 losses and 2 draws in their last 5 games, and just have not been able to put it together. That defense that was so concerning early on is starting to hurt them. They lost 2-0 to Verona in their last Serie A game. They tied to Spezia 0-0. They lost, what was it? Well, they had a draw to Inter Milan 1-1. They beat Crotone. They lost to Sampdoria 3-1. It's just, obviously that 4-1 loss, I remember covering that one to Napoli. But it's just, it's been a tough start to the season. Of course, Roma in 6th place, looking solid. And after that, everything else is pretty much about where I expected. But so that's going to wrap it up just for Serie A. Let's move on to La Liga, where at the top of the table, we still have Real Sociedad, although it is tight. And Atletico are probably going to be overtaking that because they have been absolutely on fire. They have yet to lose a game. And, they got a win over Valencia in their last game. They beat Barcelona. They dominated Cadiz, which is what you got to do against those newly promoted sides. They beat Osasuna. They beat Real Betis. They beat Celta Vigo. They did get 2, pretty much one bad draw. They shouldn't have drawn to Huesca, but they dominated Granada. I remember covering that game. I was very surprised that Granada got absolutely dominated by Atletico. But then they also drew to Villarreal. That's not really too surprising because they've been playing really solid this season. But Atletico have clearly been, in my opinion, the better team overall in La Liga this season. Real Sociedad do have the lead on them by a point, but they have 2 games more. They've played 2 more games than them. So I do expect Atletico to be at the top of this league at some point. And when you look at the rest of the table, Villarreal in 3rd place, with 20 points. They also have 11 games played. So, they're obviously... technically, if Atletico win these 2 games, they'll be putting some distance between them and the rest of the field, especially when you consider where Real Madrid and Barcelona are, which those are probably the biggest surprises. Real Madrid have allowed 12 goals early on in the season, 12 goals in 10 games. That is not expected whatsoever, and that's why they have 17 points. They've dropped a lot of points in the last couple games. They've got 2 losses and a draw in their last 3 games, and those losses came to Alaves, Valencia. It's just, that's unacceptable. If you're Real Madrid, that cannot happen. And Sevilla, they still have 2 games in hand on a lot of these teams, and they're in 5th place with 16 points. So, they could still make some ground up with Atletico, but they're technically behind them by 7 points with the same amount of games played. So, Atletico, like I said, have been playing incredible. And then same thing with with Barcelona. They are already about to be 10 points behind Atletico, and they've also been dropping points. They got 2 losses and a draw in their last 5 games, and it has not been good games. I mean, they did dominate Osasuna 4-0. They lost to Atletico. That's not terrible. But then they also lost to Real Madrid, so they're just not taking care of business against those top clubs. And it's costing them points, and it's costing them position in the field. So they're in 7th. Granada at 8. I'm a little surprised by that. Real Betis at 15. Like, what happened there? 4 losses in 5 games. That's what happened. I mean, just unable to pretty much defend anyone. They have the worst defense in the entire league. Worst goal differential as well. Absolutely terrible from them. That's why they're 15th in the league. After that, I mean, it's pretty much even. I mean, Valencia above them, that's just crazy. 17 goals scored, that's good for third. No, that's, 4th in the league. That's pretty impressive from Valencia, but their defense has not been good. They're just not solid. But now we're going to quickly go to Liga. Obviously, nothing crazy to talk about there. I mean, PSG, even though it's pretty tight, honestly, I got to give it to them. It's pretty tight up top. 25 points for PSG. They're number 1. But then you got Lille, Lyon, Monaco, and Montpellier all tied with 23 points. So that's pretty impressive. This very, very tight league here. Honestly, it's the tightest league of any in the of the top 5. And then you got Marseille with 21. I mean, you got Rennes with 19 and Angers with 19. If you look from number 1 to 8, there's only a 6-point difference there. That's nothing. 1 to 8? That's nothing. So I'm very impressed with what I've seen here. And all of Marseille, Montpellier, Monaco, and Lyon have all won at least 3 games in a row. That's they're playing really well. And PSG don't have a dominant win here. I mean, the goal differential is dominant because they're the best goal scoring team, but they're also tied for the best defense. But they have dropped points. I mean, they have a draw and a loss in their last 2 games. So they've also obviously dropped points. And hey, man, this is a very, very exciting Liga this year. So that's going to wrap it up for this segment. Make sure you guys come back, because when I return, we're going to be talking about the top 10 current Switzerland players right now.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back, everyone. If you missed the last segment, we went over each of the top 5 domestic leagues. Just talked quickly about the tables, just talked about the top 5 teams in each league, and then, of course, I talked about some of the notable teams below that. But now we're going to be talking about the top 10 current Switzerland players right now. If you guys don't know already, I've been doing a top 10 series of each of the top 20 countries in the FIFA World Rankings, and we're now at, I believe this is number 16, if I am not mistaken. Let me check that real quick. Yes, we're at 16, and in the next episode, we're going to be talking about Colombia. So, if you guys like Colombia, make sure you guys stick around for that next show. But now, let's just get right into the top 10 Switzerland players, starting with Haris Seferovic. I said that name terrible in the beginning, but I corrected myself. Let's go. He's a 28-year-old striker from Benfica. Seferovic is a prolific goal scorer and the veteran striker for Switzerland. You look at his stats, he's got 281 matches played, 168 starts. Let's go with 74 goals and 30 assists for club. And for country, he's got 66 caps, 49 starts to go with 18 goals and 9 assists. Now, Seferovic can score in a lot of different ways. He's efficient with both his feet and his head. He doesn't have a lot of athleticism, but he is quick for his size, knows when to make efficient runs to open himself up for his teammates. He did have an elite season 2 years ago when he scored 25 goals in all competitions for Benfica in their title-winning season. However, he hasn't been able to find that form since then. However, Seferovic is still a strong striker that can score with the best of them, and he's shown it already for them in the Nations League and in the, I believe it was the Euro qualifiers, if I'm not mistaken. And he's going to be relied on heavily as a rotation piece for Switzerland during their World Cup qualifiers and the Euros. So, make sure to keep an eye on Seferovic, man. The main striker for them. I mean, he won't be getting, those starter minutes because we got someone a little up ahead that we're going to be talking about. But still, you're going to see him in a lot of games. He'll certainly be coming off the bench, and he'll probably start a few games. So at number 9 now, we got Remo Freiler, the 28-year-old center midfielder from Atalanta. You look at his stats, he got 251 matches played, 232 starts to go with 27 goals and 27 assists. And for Switzerland, he's got 24 caps, 17 starts, 2 goals and 2 assists. Now, Freiler has been a staple in the first team during this rise of Atalanta that has happened over the past few seasons. He is an extremely versatile midfielder that can play pretty much in any part of the pitch in order to assist with his team's build-up play and, of course, with their defense as well. You'll see him play on the left flank. He'll play some left back. You'll see him obviously as a deep-lying playmaker as well. But then he also is good at pushing up in the attack and playing up with his teammates. Now, he certainly attacks spaces in order to give his teammates passing options, which then opens things up for them, pretty much for the team in the attack. He has the ability to score goals and has the vision to make the right pass. But when he gets into those positions, which makes him extremely valuable for Atalanta's free-flowing attack. And now defensively, Freiler is great with his positioning, and of course he has amazing IQ. He's excellent at applying pressure on attackers and cuts into those passing lanes extremely well. Plus, he can instantly turn that change of possession into an attack with his vision and just overall understanding of where his teammates are. And pretty much that's what makes Freiler absolutely, what did I say? Indispensable. Is that indispensable for Atalanta. Using big words today, guys. Now, next, and that's why he comes in at number 9. But next, at number 8, we got that striker of I guess you could say, of the present and the future for Switzerland, Breel Embolo, the 23-year-old center forward from Borussia Mönchengladbach. For club, he's got 186 matches played, 121 starts to go with 45 goals and 19 assists. And for country, he's got 39 caps. And that's a lot of caps for a 23-year-old, no less. 21 starts to go with 3 goals and 7 assists. Now, Embolo broke out with Basel as a teenager, and he earned a move to the Bundesliga when Xhak brought him in. However, he was dealing with a lot of injuries there, and that had him play just 48 matches in those 3 seasons. He did still score 10 goals during his time there, but now he is with Mönchengladbach and has played a solid role with the club. He scored 8 goals and 5 assists in 28 matches during his first season there, and has now broken into that starting 11 this season. He's got the speed, strength, to make life extremely difficult for defenders. And you combine that with his eye for goal and just his clinical finishing, and you got the makings of a top-class striker. And that is exactly the kind of potential Embolo has. However, I believe he still needs to continue his development in order to become that regular threat for Switzerland. I mean, as you see in those 39 matches, he only has 3 goals scored for Switzerland. So he's still not there yet. But I still think, even with just his natural abilities, he's already the 8th best player in Switzerland. Next, at number 7, we have Nico Alvetti, 24-year-old center back from Borussia Mönchengladbach. Another Mönchengladbach player. You're going to see that that's a trend that we have here. You look at his stats, he's got 198 matches played, 182 starts, with 8 goals and 5 assists for club. And for Switzerland, he's got 21 caps, 18 starts to go with 1 goal and 1 assist. Now, Alvetti is one of the best young ball-playing defenders in the world, as he has excellent composure with the ball at his feet while also boasting excellent athleticism that allows him to play any position on the back line. And on top of his excellent abilities on the ball, Alvetti uses his athleticism and defensive IQ to get the upper hand in most situations. Now, he has plenty of speed to keep up with those attackers, with pace and all that. And he also has great strength and balance to keep himself on the ball when the opposition is putting pressure on him. And then on top of that, he's an excellent passer. He's able to pick out passes to advancing teammates with his vision and get the ball out of those pressure situations. Now, and I believe he's going to be a staple for Switzerland's backline for years to come and will be one of the top transfer targets for a lot of top clubs looking for help on the back line. And he's going to be a perfect partner along with the next person on this list, number 6, Manuel Akanji, 25-year-old center back from Borussia Dortmund. Now, for club stats, you look, he's got 143 matches played, 133 starts to go with 7 goals and 4 assists. And for Switzerland, he's got 24 matches, 24 caps, 24 starts. Now, Akanji is an extremely sound defender that is rarely caught out of position and makes the right decisions more often than not when the ball gets into the Dortmund half. And to have that sort of calming presence, I mean, that is, just such a necessity, especially in the international game. You need somebody that can just go and get you a stop. That is who Akanji is. And then plus, you add that to his composure with the ball and his ability to pick out defensive cutting passes from the back, make him an all-around defender that is extremely hard to find, honestly. The reason I put Akanji over Alvetti, because certainly both have great qualities. Both are pretty similar players. However, I just feel like Akanji is just much more sound as a player. He's much more versatile, or not more versatile, I guess just all around, I would say. And he is just a perfect, just key piece for any backline. He makes the right decisions on his tackles as well. He doesn't get called for a lot of fouls, as much as you would think with his aggressive play. And overall, Akanji is just an extremely solid defender who's going to be leading that Swiss back line for the next few years. Now, at number 5, someone that I couldn't put any lower on this list. We have Roman Bürki, the 30-year-old goalkeeper from Borussia Dortmund. He's got 366 matches played, 365 starts with a 706 save percentage and 123 clean sheets for club. For Switzerland, not as prominent. He's got 9 matches, 9 caps, and 9 starts, 4 clean sheets. Really hasn't done much for country. And honestly, I just couldn't, even with that, I just couldn't put Roman Bürki any lower on this list. He's been a staple in Dortmund's first team for the past 6 seasons, and that's pretty impressive when you consider the fact that he isn't one of the top goalkeeper names that you really think about when you talk top goalkeepers. I guarantee you Roman Bürki isn't one of the ones that you're thinking about on the top of your head. Now, unfortunately for him, that makes him an easy scapegoat when things don't go right for Dortmund, which has been the case as they haven't been able to win the league during his tenure there. He certainly, though, makes his fair share of mistakes, I'm not going to lie, and his positioning isn't what Dortmund fans would praise about. However, his reaction time and speed off his lines are top-notch and has gotten Dortmund out of many desperate situations. He's also a keeper that has been through it all. I mean, he's had some really low and disappointing seasons with Dortmund, while also having, one of the best seasons, some of the best seasons you'll see from a goalkeeper. And when you got that, it goes a long way in forming a top-class keeper. Unfortunately for Switzerland, though, Berkey did step away from international duty in order to focus on his club career, and honestly, that's why I feel like he doesn't go any higher. I mean, we got another goalkeeper later on this list, no doubt, and that's probably why he doesn't get a lot of starts, because it's really close. I mean, but I have to give. I mean, really, it's not close anymore. I mean, I consider the other goalkeeper a lot better than him, but Roman Berkey certainly is one of the best Switzerland players who doesn't play on the national team. At number 4, and I was really, really close of putting this guy number 3, but I figured I just don't think he's there anymore. Granit Xhak, 28-year-old defensive midfielder from Arsenal. He's got 377 matches played, 331 starts, with 22 goals and 27 assists for club, and for country, he's got 77 caps, 74 starts to go with 9 goals and 8 assists. It was a regular scapegoat at Arsenal, as he would often be seen as a weak link and not worthy of wearing Arsenal colors. However, since the arrival of manager Mikel Arteta, Xhaka has played some of the best ball of his career, and a lot of that has to do with the difference in the way he's put out there. A lot of the time he was just used as a regular central midfielder who would have to play box to box, and that's not really where Xhaka shines. He more shines, in the back line, or at least closer to the back line, where you can see, the entire field and pick out his passes much better. And that is what Arteta has done, and it's really shown people that he is a quality player. I just don't think he does enough on both ends of the floor. Like, he certainly has great vision and is able to make pinpoint passes to his teammates, and certainly contributes on that end. And while he's also very solid on the defensive end, but in my opinion, he's not exceptional at any one of those things. He does them all solid. He's very good at all of them, but he doesn't do one thing exceptional, and that is where he falls off a bit. He's just a very solid player. Plus, he has a lot of experience, and on a team like Switzerland that doesn't have a lot of that, they rely on a lot of youth. Granit Xhak is one of those calming presences in the midfield. So that is why he comes in at number 4. Now, number 3, we have one of the rising stars for Switzerland. We have Dennis Zakaria, 24-year-old defensive midfielder from Borussia Mönchengladbach. Now, he has 154 matches played, 133 starts to go with 10 goals and 5 assists. And for country, he's got 27 caps, 16 starts to go with 3 goals and 3 assists. Now, over his time in the Bundesliga, Zakaria has become one of the best defensive players in the league, as he is near the top in most defensive stats, which is extremely impressive, especially when you consider the fact that he often takes on a box-to-box midfielding role. I mean, his challenges are some of the best you'll see, as he times his tackles to perfection. He has great pace for his size, and matches that with his strength to get attackers off the ball and make life difficult for them overall. Despite his strength being defense, though, Zakaria also enjoys getting up the pitch and contributing in his team's attack as well, which is what makes him so good. Like, it's the fact that, like, he's like Ndidi type defending. At least, obviously he's not there yet, but he has that sort of potential. But then he's also very, very, very good and very comfortable with taking the ball up. He's great without the ball, as he attacks open spaces to become a passing option during build-up play. But he's also got really solid dribbling skills and vision to be a threat with the ball. So absolutely, in my opinion, deserves to be number 3 on this list ahead of Xhaka. Some people might disagree. Let me know in the comments section. But Denis Zakaria is the 3rd best Switzerland player right now. Now at number 2, we have the best goalkeeper in Switzerland, Yann Sommer. I was very close to putting him number 1, but I just couldn't edge him over the next guy on this list. I'm sure you guys know who it is. If you don't, you'll find out pretty soon. But you look at his stats, Yann Sommer's got a lot of experience. 455 matches played, 455 starts. He's got a 738 save percentage and 135 clean sheets. For Switzerland, he's got 54 caps, 53 starts, a 720 save percentage, and 23 clean sheets. Very consistent between, club and country. You don't see that very often, but Yann Sommer has been that for both Borussia Mönchengladbach and Switzerland. And he has established himself as one of the best goalkeepers in the Bundesliga, and honestly, in the world, in my opinion, as well. I mean, his reaction time, positioning, and sweeper-keeper abilities are exceptional. And he's got great positioning as well, and is almost never caught in a bad spot. Of course, when, some really hard shots are sent his way, the reaction time certainly gets him into those positions to stop the ball. However, it's initially his positioning that gets him into a chance to stop the ball. Now, his presence gives his teams confidence, as they know he'll always clean up any messes. And in terms of shot stopping, I mean, Yann Sommer might be one of the best keepers in the world. Honestly, if I had to redo even though he started off the season kind of inconsistent, but now, he's been one of the best for a long time. He would be probably still just outside my top 10. Maybe top 15 goalkeepers. But, that's still extremely impressive. And at 31 years old, Sommer is at the perfect age for goalkeepers. Got enough experience that he's not, young and he won't make, silly mistakes. But he's also not old enough where he's, he lost a lot of his athleticism. And he's going to be one of the leaders for Switzerland as they try to find that success in the World Cup qualifiers and Euros. And now, last and certainly not least, we have Sherdon Shaqiri, 29-year-old winger. Oh, I said that weird. 29-year-old winger from Liverpool. Club stats, he got 333 matches played, 234 starts to go with 58 goals and 53 assists. And for Switzerland, he's got 71 caps, 66 starts to go with 19 goals and 17 assists. Just, you look at those stats and you have a complete attacking player. He's one of the flashiest players in Switzerland, and he's been Switzerland's number 1 player for years. And that obviously is not going to be changing on this list or pretty much anytime soon. He currently plays for one of the best clubs in the world in Liverpool, and though he doesn't get consistent minutes, he's not a regular starter for them, it is clear that when he does play, he still has the class and skill to make a big-time impact. Now, he does have, you look at his skills, he's got excellent vision, great finishing ability, and he also has the speed to blow by defenders. Really, it's not just straight pace, it's more acceleration combined with that speed that really gets him through, because he can start and stop in a hurry. And then his technical skills are still top class, and shows them nearly every time he steps onto the pitch. Shaqiri is also an extremely efficient dead ball specialist, and he is the difference maker for Switzerland. Hands down. And he's going to be the key in everything they do in attack. And that's why he is the number 1 player in Switzerland right now. So that's going to wrap it up for the show. I hope you guys enjoyed. Obviously, always leave in the comment section any suggestions you guys have for the show. Or just if you guys want to talk. Because I would love to communicate with any of you guys. Just let me know. And yeah, it's going to wrap it up. So as always, thank you for listening to the GSMC Soccer Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, I would really appreciate it. Thank you and have a great night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.